Beat the 92. That's my challenge for Football Manager 2024. I'm Anders. Hello. And I want to beat every single English League club in a competitive fixture in the same save game. Yes, I am mad. From Accrington Stanley.
Accrington Stanley? Who are they? Exactly.
All the way through to Wycombe Wanderers and everyone in between. I've given myself a 10-season window to try and get this done, so we need to just win under 10 games every single season against different clubs each and every year. Sounds easy! I started unemployed, but within 10 days find myself a new home at Bradford City, replacing old Sparky.
All my friends from school are still living in the village and in the area and whatever.
I've got a 2-year contract and I'm taking bets in the comments on how many of the 92 clubs I'll be able to beat in that time frame before we get a new job. Oh yeah, I've imposed a 2-year max spell at each club just to make this daft idea a little bit harder. The media prediction is 5th and the board are hopeful of the playoffs, so maybe we can make good headway into League 2 if nothing else. A bit of housekeeping at this point: a victory counts if it happens in normal time in either a League, Cup or European fixture. Victories in extra time or on penalties count for absolutely nothing, and neither do wins over an under-23 side in the Papa John's Trophy. Now, I've chucked a 4-4-2 gegenpress tactic to start with, and this looks like it might be our best 11. And hey, look, there's Matt Derbyshire.
This hit shot from Jason Roberts, finding Matt Derbyshire.
I didn't even realise he was still playing. Our best player is apparently our goalkeeper in Harry Lewis, so hopefully that means a secure pair of hands, which is critical to not losing games. But maybe we need to sort out the strikers to win some games as well. We shall see. We started out on fire at home to Colchester as Clark O'Dore drifted in at the back post and headed home the first goal of the series. Get in. Young Bobby Poynton ran through the defence like a prime Michael Owen and slotted home to grab a second and put us on our way to our first victory. We were nowhere in our next 2 away games, but back on home soil it was O'Dore and Poynton linking up to score 2 more goals and secure another victory, this time over Crewe. The League 2 table at the end of August saw us sitting 9th, but more importantly it was 2 down and just 90 to go. Our first away scalp came in the very next game, just around the corner from me at a very wet and soggy One-Call Stadium as we put 3 past a struggling Mansfield, with Poynton once again getting his name on the scoresheet with the final goal. 3 defeats followed, but a cracking game away at Newport County put us back on track, and our imaginary counter is now up to 4 clubs. Maybe I should add a counter as well, because that would make things easier to follow along with. Let's do that from now on. We ended September with another victory as our Kenyan superstar nodded home the only goal at home to Walsall. We started and ended October with defeats to Tranmere and Wimbledon, but the intervening 5 games saw us double our win total. We beat Swindon, Grimsby, Wrexham, MK Dons and Sutton, and to take us to the 10% mark against our target. This challenge might not take that long if we keep this up. Spoiler, it will. The league table at the end of the month left us well in the promotion hunt, and that would open the door to even more clubs that we can try and beat and tick off our list. But let's not get carried away just yet, as there's still a dozen or more clubs to beat in League 2 yet. I had my hand forced into changing the formation as it occurred to me, spoiler, the guy told me so, that we were leaving out a really good player who can only play attacking midfielder. So Alex Patterson, you're in now mate, and we're still time to shine. And shine he did, scoring within an hour to give us another win, ticking Barrow off of our list. Either side of that result, we were dumped out of both remaining cup competitions, so we could focus just on scoring as many wins as possible against new opposition in the league. We nearly made it an even dozen against Notts County with an Andy Cook header putting us ahead, but late on the newly promoted side caught us on the break with McGoldrick levelling the score, and as you know, a draw is useless to us. After another draw, we got to the dozen with a 2-0 win at Forest Green, with Pattison once again scoring after his reintroduction into the starting 11. December gave us 2 more teams to tick off the list, namely Salford and Doncaster, along with 2 pointless draws and a disappointing defeat. The league table was looking decent as we hit the turn of the year, but we were now going into the second half of the season and therefore repeat fixtures. We were sitting on 14 out of 92, but as we were already out of all 3 cups, we could only realistically reach 21 by the end of the season. That's only an additional 7 teams left on our fixture list. January needs no mention really, as our only wins came against teams we had already beaten, and February would also likely be slim pickings, as our only chance at advancement came against Wimbledon at the start of the month. Despite going 3-0 up by half time, we managed to squander our chance and let in 3 second half goals for another of those useless draws. The rest of February was great for our promotion hopes, as we now led the chasing pack in third, but an injury to our star goalkeeper Harry Lewis was going to make March, where we had 4 potential scalps on offer, much tougher. Having our 39-year-old goalkeeping coach in between the sticks didn't really hamper us too much, as we finally ticked off another club on the list with a 2-0 victory over Accrington Stanley.
Accrington Stanley? Who are they? Exactly.
In the following weeks, we took our March hit rate up to 75%, as further victories against Harrogate and Tranmere came along with this 96th minute winner to grab that all-important victory. Our run-in was pretty abysmal in that we lost to Gillingham, the only remaining team that we could tick off of our list this season, and this left us at 17 out of the 92 clubs beaten and only 75 left to go. We're nearly there. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, as with 7 points from the final 3 games of the season, Bradford had secured promotion to League One. This will open up a massive chunk of those clubs for us to beat next season. So not all bad really. Promotion to League One for Bradford opened up another 22 clubs for us to beat in our challenge to beat the 92. We already sit on 17 out of 92, so with an invincible league campaign and a good cup run, we'll be over 50% by the end of the season. Very realistic, right? There are a fair few new faces being introduced to the squad over the summer. The bulk on free transfers, with the highlight being a new Bulgarian striker named Kun Temuzuchkov. Definitely pronounced that right. We strengthened up other key areas and went with the Arteta approach of having 2 first-choice goalkeepers, as Archie Mayer joined to replace Harry Lewis, who then signed a new contract instead of leaving. We also signed experienced centre-back Michael Ihikwe on a free, whilst bringing in winger Liam Smith on loan from Swansea. This gave us a pretty strong-looking best 11 in our current 4-2-3-1 formation. The season preview had Bradford listed as 14th, suggesting we should be able to add an extra 10 clubs to our hit list, but I was confident of more. We started the season with 2 shots at taking Oxford United out, as we faced them in the league and the cup within 3 days. This was a good thing, as we needed 2 attempts to get the job done, losing in the league but smashing them in the cup, scoring 4 goals, culminating with this long-range banger.
Bang, and the dirt is gone!
Our next victory came at the end of August thanks to a late header from Poynton at the back post, finally getting us past AFC Wimbledon at the 3rd time of asking. The intervening fixtures saw us smash MK Don 6-0 and then 3 back-to-back draws, including a penalty win over Port Vale in the Cup. This left our league position looking good, but unfortunately that doesn't really matter in this challenge. A penalty was all we needed to overcome Stevenage away from home. 3 second-half goals away at Derby netted another win, with Clark O'Dore grabbing a brace and Temuzichkov capping off a great performance. A draw against Lincoln made it 10 games unbeaten, but the best was yet to come as we went to Middlesbrough in the Carabao Cup. Temuzichkov opened the scoring in the opening minutes before Sean McGurk, on loan from Leeds, took over in the second half. First providing the assist to Luke Young and then securing the 3-0 win with this effort to take our first championship scalp. Our first defeat since the opening day of the season followed as we lost away at Bolton, but the league table was looking pretty decent, sitting 8th at the end of September. More importantly though, our tracker was going along well as we now had 22 teams ticked off out of the 92 with 8 months to go at Bradford. A back post header from Kieran Kelly was enough to return us to winning ways and secure victory at home to Preston, and we followed that up by putting 7 past Nottingham Forest's under-23 side in the Papa John's Trophy. Another massive win that counts for absolutely nothing here. A draw against Barnsley and defeat to league leaders Bristol City slowed us down slightly, but an absolutely thrilling encounter with Exeter followed. We went 3-0 up inside 20 minutes thanks to a brace from McGurk and a corker from O'Dore. But a second half collapse saw Exeter battle their way back into the game, equalising in the 93rd minute. But we managed to grab victory from the jaws of defeat as Kieran Kelly rose above everyone else once again to nod home the winner in the 5th minute of stoppage time. McGurk continued his great form, setting up this effort for Jake Young against Stockport before curling in from just out inside the box in the second half to secure the 2-0 victory. Our Carabao Cup exploits ended away at Cardiff thanks to a stoppage time scramble that gave the struggling champion side the 2-1 victory. But we managed to progress in the FA Cup and tick off Northampton in the process thanks to an excellent Andy Cook hat-trick. Check out these goals. I also turned down the chances to interview for the vacant manager's job at both Portsmouth and Derby. I don't know where I'll be going after my Bradford contract is done, but I definitely don't want to cut it short and jump into a relegation fight in the same league. November itself wasn't great. We advanced out of the group to the Papa John's Trophy, but our next victory came at the end of the month away at Carlisle. We went behind, but Jake Young's finish at the near post, and then O'Dore's long-range rocket gave us 3 points and ticked off another club on our list. Long-range rockets were the order of the day in our FA Cup clash with high-flying Bristol City, as Pattison's effort from 30 yards was the deciding goal. Another 1-0 victory followed as we visited Cambridge, with veteran Andy Cook slocking home once again the only goal from Young's cutback, and we were now at 29 clubs. This run set up a clash with league leaders Huddersfield at Valley Parade. Just after the hour mark, Tyler Smith threaded the needle and McGurk smashed it home to take us to 30 out of 92. We are well on our way. 2 draws followed, but Tamunishkov's first goal since September put us on our way to an eventual 2-1 victory over Bolton. And we closed the year with 8 goals and 2 wins over Preston and Bristol City, leaving us in 3rd place in the league and City pretty on our tracker towards 92 clubs. Defeat to Wigan on New Year's Day was not the best start to 2025, but the day after I was approached by Championship side Ipswich. Now, the Tractor Boys were in the middle of a relegation battle, so now might not be the best time to join them, but we can't stay at Bradford beyond the end of the season anyway, so it was definitely some food for thought. The offer came in and we were able to negotiate a June 1st start date, the best of both worlds. Now, I agreed to the deal and would head to Portman Road at the end of the season. I just hope that they can remain a Championship club next year, as there may not be many League One clubs left to beat at this rate. Back-to-back cup games followed, and with defeat to Premier League West Ham and a penalty victory over Lincoln City, we advanced to the final 8 of the Papa John's Trophy to meet Wigan, with another shot at beating them after our recent defeat. We then put in a fantastic showing against Shrewsbury, with Tyler Smith grabbing a well-worked goal to open the scoring. A penalty apiece within 10 minutes kept things at the status quo, before Jake Young doubled our lead in a first half stoppage time. The second half saw some real separation between the sides, with Young's cutback finding Liam Smith for the 4th, and Andy Cook grabbing his goal to send us back to 3rd place thanks to the 5-1 victory. The rest of the month was pretty good for the league, with a few more victories, but we failed to beat Wigan for the 3rd time this season. Victory on penalties was great as it set up a semi-final clash with Derby, but we'd already beat them, so it was ultimately pointless, just like the Papa John's Trophy. We were still deep in the hunt for the playoffs, and it looks like Ipswich are currently outside the relegation places, so maybe I'll get a chance to beat Bradford next season. We have 7 more opportunities to tick clubs off of our list over the next 3 months, which gives us a best case scenario of 39 out of 92. The first of those 7 games was away at Lincoln, and an early penalty from Tamunishkov gave us the lead, but a first half brace from Lincoln's Tyler Walker gave them the win. First half at Oakwell was perhaps the worst 45 minutes of my career so far, but some stern words at half-time gave the side a much-needed boost. Jake Young strolled into the penalty box and slotted home the first, before McGurk sent Tamunishkov through to grab a second goal. Unfortunately, that was the end of our fight back and we slumped to defeat yet again. I think I've jinxed us by suggesting we could win any of these games, and to make matters worse, Young will miss most of the remaining games through injury with a twisted knee. Our next chance came at home to Blackpool and we went behind early and needed a penalty to rescue a point, so that's 3 from 3 so far in our run-in, and not in the direction I was hoping for. We were 80 minutes deep against Charlton before finally unlocking something. A ball over the top was squared first time by Smith, with Tamunchkov smashing home the opener. Within a few minutes, O'Dore cut inside after a poorly cleared corner and doubled our advantage to finally get us to 33 clubs. The next match was the Papa John's Trophy semi-final, which didn't really matter for this challenge as we'd already beaten opponents Derby, and that was a good thing as the Rams had us easily beat on the day with a ward brace, knocking us out of the cup. League form continued to be good when we needed it to be, as we put 5 goals past Portsmouth, with Cook opening the scoring from the spot. O'Dore heading home at the back post a few minutes later. Before half-time, we were clear thanks to a fantastic long-range free kick from O'Dore to get his second of the game. The second half was more of the same, with Smith putting the ball over the top and Cook grabbing his second of the game, and our fourth before the rout was completed in injury time to make it 5-0. Leyton Orient were up next, and our run continued thanks to a header from Kieran Kelly and a fantastic volley from Liam Smith to rack up win number 35, making this season even better than the last. We had one more fixture left on the table. Now, speaking of tables, the League One table was looking pretty secure in terms of our playoff chances, with 4 games left to play. There was still an outside shot at automatic promotion if everything went in our favour. And we did what we needed to do on both fronts against Port Vale, with Tyler Smith smashing home in the 6th minute before doubling our advantage from the penalty spot just 5 minutes later. Port Vale got one back before Smallwood unleashed a fantastic effort from range to secure the victory. Not only did this take our tally to 36 out of 92 clubs to finish our time at Bradford City, it also somehow sent us top as clubs around us were throwing it all away. Huddersfield could only draw the next night, so we were just 1 point behind them going into the final day. Our performance against Burton Albion on the last day could not have been better as Tyler Smith grabbed our first of the game just after half time. A minute later we attacked again as McGurk was left wide open in the penalty area to double our lead. Smith grabbed his second with a looping back post header, and then news came through of a Wimbledon penalty which put Huddersfield behind and all but secured the League One title. Smith finished off his hat-trick and our unlikely League One victory was assured. We'd come from 5 points back with 4 games to go and somehow stole the title on the last day. Now it's going to be a shame to be leaving Bradford, but hopefully Ipswich can survive on the last day of the Championship and I'll still be in the Championship next season. There's only 56 teams to go and still 8 seasons to do it. After back-to-back promotions with Bradford City, it was time for a change. Off to Portman Road we go as the new manager of Ipswich Town. The media prediction of 8th is all well and good, but this side finished 19th in the Championship last season, and at least half of this best 11 is unhappy. But that's not really what this series is all about. We're looking to beat the 92 English League clubs, and after 2 years with Bradford, we've beaten 36. That's nearly 40%. We have 8 seasons left in this challenge to get the rest done. Jump forward to August, and this Ipswich side is much different, and hopefully better than the one I took over. So far, we've sold £32 million worth of players and only spent $5.5 million in return, but we are well over the wage budget and already have 6 loans in for the season. First, the outs. Dutch defensive midfielder Jaro Riedeveld is off to Saudi Arabia for $11 million. Stalwart defender Luke Wolfenden was unhappy, so forced his way out to recently promoted Bristol City for another $8 million. Saleh Ukon went to Saudi for just under $4 million, with Al Khalij also spending $5 million to take Axel Tuanzebe off of my hands. The final, for now, player out the door was former captain Harry Clark, who joined Middlesbrough for £4 million. Now, more importantly, the new players began with first-choice goalkeeper Freddie Woodman on a free transfer after he'd impressed with Preston in League One last season. And then there were 2 loan signings from last season who had already been made permanent before I joined the club, with Isaac Hayden from Newcastle and Josh Bowler from Forest for a combined $2.6 million. My free transfers continued, with veteran striker Chris Wood joining us after his time at Forest came to an end, and Hannibal joined from Manchester United to star in our midfield. Chelsea cast-off Faustino Angerin also signed, but is unlikely to feature immediately in the starting 11. I then set about filling out the squad with loan signings, bringing in Connor Bradley from Liverpool, Jamie Donnelly to lead the attacking line from Spurs, Ed Turns from Brighton, Emmanuel Iwu from Bournemouth to really shore up our defence, Finley Burns from Man City, and Andrew Moran also from Brighton, but mainly because he's at Blackburn currently, and also he looks really, really good. We're also in the process of bringing in veteran Sander van der Streek to provide added depth to the midfield, whilst goalkeeper Jamie Cumming is all but signed by Leicester to become their backup keeper. I'm hanging on to him though, as Woodman is injured to start the season. Speaking of starting the season, the preview now has us up at 10th, but I reckon I've strengthened enough to really push for playoff contention. Poor Bradford, on the other hand, are predicted to go straight back down with Tony Mowbray now in charge. The opening day saw things start incredibly well, and just 10 minutes into the game, a poor clearance by the Wednesday keeper was intercepted by Moran and slotted in Donnelly for the opening goal. 20 minutes later, and Bowler found Donnelly in loads of space, and he looped in a stunner from 20 yards that Yeboah itself off the crossbar.
On he goes!
Before half-time, Burns headed home a scrambled corner to make it 3, and Donnelly grabbed his hat-trick from the penalty spot. The second half slowed down considerably, with Sheffield Wednesday grabbing a consolation goal before a broadhead cutback allowed Angerin to score on his debut as well, and the 6-1 victory was completed as Iwu nodded in from a Brannigan free kick. A fantastic performance all around. A couple of rocky performances followed, but we were back to our best against Plymouth. Donnelly once again opened up the scoring with a cracking effort from long range, before Iwu headed in the rebound after a Burns hit the crossbar from a corner. Minutes later, Burns found the target with his head finally, and we went into half-time 3-0 ahead. Donnelly and Hannibal then linked up on the edge of the area, with the Tunisian grabbing his goal to make it 4, and a Plymouth consolation from a late corner didn't dampen our spirits too much. We sold another former first-team defender as Leif Davies wanted out and was headed to the UAE for $7.5 million, and we finally confirmed that sale of Jamie coming to Leicester for $600k. His replacement came in the form of Dutch keeper Mickey van Saars from Feyenoord for $150k, and we also broke the Ipswich transfer record by signing left-back Max Lowe from Derby for £7.5 million. Back on the pitch, we got our next victory over Swansea in a great game, and we went ahead early as Hayden's through ball found Moran, who smashed it home. Donnelly then notched up another with his head before Hayden hit a beautiful volley to make it 3-0 before half-time. It was a different story in the second half as we disappeared and allowed Swansea to get 2 goals from set pieces, but we managed to just about hold on for the victory. Then, for some reason, Blackburn boss Jon Dahl Tomasson started taking shots at my transfer dealings. Definitely friendly fire there, mate. Speaking of Blackburn, we signed former Rovers man Joe Rothwell on a free after he'd left Bournemouth, another solid player for our midfield. We continued to beat up well on Welsh clubs, putting 3 past Cardiff, with Donnelly getting the opener before second half goals from Bowler and Wood put us to 40 teams overall. The rest of September was draw heavy, and we ended the month just outside the playoffs in 8th place. More goals followed in our next victory over QPR, with the game eventually ending 6-2 in our favour. Donnelly and Van der Street got goals in the first half before a goal line scramble at the opposite end kept QPR in the game by half time. Bowler grabbed another great solo goal after the break before turning provider for Hayden to make it 4. QPR followed with a consolation before Donnelly and then Hayden grabbed their second goals of the game to finish us off at 6-2. This set us up nicely for a visit back to Valley Parade and a struggling Bradford. Now Moran made a great run to score the opener, but the game really took a turn at half time. Donnelly found Selina and bags of space for the second before Selina hustled for an interception and scored a cracking second goal of his own. We took our foot off the pedal though and allowed Bradford to grab 2 goals before Wood headed home from a corner to score a 4-2 victory over my former club. This put us at 42 clubs out of 92, but we were far from finished yet. Over the next 4 games we scored 9 unanswered goals over Sunderland, Burnley, Coventry and Millwall to rack up 4 more victories and put us to the halfway point of our challenge. November was a great month and another victory over Middlesbrough left us in second in the table behind rivals Norwich. December was much more rocky, but we did score 4 wins out of 7 and 3 of those counted in our challenge. The first being a 4-2 victory over West Brom. Burns grabbed the opener, followed by a great turn in the box before Rothwell bundled home the second. West Brom got one back in the second half, but Rothwell turned provider and sent Van der Streek through for the third goal, with Wood making it 4 to round things out. We nearly stumbled against Reading as they took the lead in first half injury time, but Ipswich took control in the final 10 minutes, with Hayden capping off a great move for the equaliser, and then it was Van der Streek who continued his great form by grabbing a brace, and we were up to 48 wins. Another goal fest closed out the year as we smashed Rotherham 5-2. Hayden, a brace from Donnelly, Moran and Wood were the goal scorers. Despite the setbacks in December, we were still in a strong second place in the Championship table and up to 13 wins for Ipswich with 49 overall. This is going incredibly well. We got lucky in the FA Cup draw as we handed a tie with Peterborough, a side we failed to beat as Bradford, but we got the win thanks to a goal from Hurst and a penalty from Donnelly, and 50 was up. Defeat to Stoke followed and we went behind to Hull after a sloppy pass was intercepted, but some much better passing set up our equaliser, with Moran finishing it off. Donnelly put us ahead from the penalty spot, but Hull were quick to level things up as well. And the tie was finally broken thanks to another well-worked goal that was finished off by Hannibal. We had our third shot at Leeds for the season and went ahead thanks to Burns, but Leeds equalised late in the second half to ruin our chances at another scalp. In the next match against Forest, we went ahead before half-time as Broadhead smashed home after a scramble. Forest levelled things up, but a rare appearance from Baggott at the back post put us back ahead. 2 late goals from Crespo, however, gave Forest the undeserved victory, and we were still stuck. We rebounded with a run of victories which kept our promotion hopes alive and gave us a quarter-final place in the FA Cup against Chelsea. We were 1 point behind Forest and level on points with Middlesbrough with 10 games to go in the league. The FA Cup tie at Stamford Bridge was absolute chaos. A sloppy back pass allowed Nkunku through to give Chelsea the early lead, but then Broadhead got the equaliser from the penalty spot at the hour mark, and Chelsea were then back ahead by half-time thanks to a cracking volley from Lukaku. The second half saw Hannibal and Bowler linking up nicely down the right flank, and the Tunisian drew us level. Another abysmal back pass, however, allowed Lukaku through to put Chelsea ahead, and we gifted them 2 of their 3 goals. We tried to press the issue to get an equaliser, but Chelsea caught us on the break, and Lukaku sealed his hat-trick on the break. Broadhead then found a lovely through ball, putting Moran through, who then squared it for Hannibal to make it 3-4, and we'd still got a chance with 20 minutes to go. But Mudryk then put the game beyond doubt, and it ended 5-3 to Chelsea, with 2 of their goals being absolute gifts. This was a near miss for us in this challenge. But the very next game, we put 2 past Watford with a solid victory, Moran grabbing the first, Donnelly getting the second, and things were back on the right track. 2 more victories in the league set up a massive clash with Norwich. We were 5 points behind them with a game in hand, so a victory would put us in pole position for the championship title. Now the derby game started well as Hannibal caught a rebound and blasted home from the edge of the area, but Norwich got a late equaliser and we were left with just 1 more chance to increase our win count this season, with our automatic promotion hopes going down to the final day as well. Now that game at home to Blackburn was a key one. We moved to 53 out of 92 with a 2-0 victory and secured automatic promotion to the Premier League. Donnelly grabbed both goals and we will definitely be looking to make his loan move permanent next season. Our running was a little rough, but we did still do enough to beat Forest on goal difference and take second place in the league. 53 down, 39 to go, 7 more seasons left to do it in, but the Premier League is going to be really tough next season. 53 clubs out of 92, that's where we stand, and Ipswich are now in the Premier League once again. It's going to be an uphill battle though, as we're predicted 19th in the season preview, and we'll be looking for a new job at the end of the season no matter how it goes. We've spent 100 million over the summer, but the squad is pretty much the same as last season, with the vast majority of that money being spent making our loanees permanent. But our first out was Chris Wood to Saudi Arabia, and he never really made an impact in his single season with the club, so it made sense to cash in whilst we still could. And speaking of cashing in, Van der Streek was also out. He'd played well, but for 4 million, the 33-year-old was too good to turn down. Donnelly was made permanent for 20 million, as was Iwu for 27.5 from Bournemouth. Andy Moran smashed our transfer record with his £50 million move from Brighton, whilst Burns was a steal for 4 million from Manchester City. The loans, however, did continue, with Marin Petkov joining from Championship side Leeds for depth on the wings. Liverpool youngster Tyler Morton, formerly of Blackburn, came in as our second domestic loan as well. With Matthias Martins coming in on loan from Udinese, with the Brazilian having bags of English experience, having spent several seasons with Watford. We did make 2 final free transfer moves, bringing in Brooke Norton-Cuffy in as backup for the right backs, and James McAtee coming in from Man City on a free, getting straight into contention for a starting place in the attacking line. However, just days before the season started, Brentford came calling with a job interview, but before we could find out anything, we were visiting the Etihad to open the Premier League campaign. Haaland scored early and Manchester City just wouldn't stop scoring. We did get a consolation from Donnelly, but it was a 5-1 defeat. I think it would be quite interesting to take that Brentford job, given the performance we've just seen. But after nearly 3 weeks, Brentford finally came back with a decision and rejected me, opting for Arne Slot instead. The reason they gave, my lofty league expectation of top half finish was too much for their board. Never mind. We did smash Middlesbrough 5-0 in the meantime and then looked like a completely different side as we travelled to Bournemouth despite going 1-0 down early on. We bounced back immediately with Donnelly and then never looked back, eventually cruising to a 5-1 victory at the Vitality. That's 11 goals in 3 games and one of those was a 5-1 defeat. Fulham were up next and we had an all-elite performance in the first half. Donnelly got a brace and then in the second half they battled back and it was 3-3 before we entered stoppage time, but a well-worked free kick left Angerin in bags of space and we grabbed the winner. Send for the Khan!
What did you just say?
I said, hi, Tony. You look great.
Oh, it's good. It was great. I'm excited. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Absolutely.
It's going great.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks,
yeah.
guys. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you around.
Despite the opening day, we ended August strong and somehow managed to sit third in the league, just a single point behind Manchester City. Now, a confident performance against the other side of Manchester brought us up to 56, thanks to these goals from Donnelly and Martins. And then a similarly strong performance away at Spurs followed, but we got 2 late goals from Martins once again and Morton, and that was enough to score another victory, and our fairy tale start to the season had continued. The game against Newcastle then was much tougher, with Isaac putting them ahead early on, but then we were not going to go down easily. Goals from Donnelly and McAtee put us ahead at the break, and we extended the lead thanks to McAtee's second. Newcastle pulled one back, but late on a goal from Angerin on the counter gave us a well-deserved 4-2 victory. And look at that bloody league table. Ipswich are top of the league after 8 games. What on earth could go wrong? Disaster! Jamie Donnelly is out for 6 months with damaged cruciate ligaments, and this could signal the end of our season as his 7 goals from 9 starts is going to be really tough to replace. But it didn't stop us really immediately as we went to Brentford and made them regret their decision earlier on in the season as Selena scored the only goal of the game and we took another victory. October did see 2 defeats though, as Crystal Palace and Sheffield United both won at Portman Road, and we ended the month in a 4-way tie for the lead with Manchester City, Liverpool, Ipswich and Arsenal all tied on 22 points, only separated by goal difference. There were 33 teams left now to complete the challenge, and this screen is looking surprisingly full already. A goal fest against Brighton kicked off November, and after being back and forth, we eventually came out with a 5-2 victory, with Moran getting on the scoreboard against his former club, and that put us up to another team off the list. Defeat to Liverpool followed, but another back and forth goal fest came next in the East Anglian derby. We raced to a 3-0 lead, but Norwich managed to somehow fight back and kept fighting, but we eventually left as 4-3 winners. December did see a couple of job interviews at both Tottenham and then Crystal Palace, but eventually neither club came with an offer. For various reasons, they went with other managers, which is good for them, but not so good for us as we need a new club by the end of the season. And that uncertainty led to an absolutely terrible December, and it took 4 more weeks for us to score another victory, and we didn't get a single point in that time either. We hosted Leicester just after Christmas, and the 3-2 victory was much needed on all fronts. Now, after we were snubbed by Crystal Palace for their manager role, we faced them on New Year's Day and slapped them around to win 2-1 and tick them off the list as well. 30 to go. The 4 straight defeats in December had made a massive dent in our league position, and we were still just about hanging on to a hunt for the European places as we sat 7th before Bournemouth came knocking with a job interview. Now, Bournemouth, if you look at the league table, are down in 17th and really struggling. But I'm desperate for a new job at the end of the season. I cannot stay at Ipswich, and there's a lot of Premier League clubs left to go, so we really need to stay in the Premier League. I moved forward and agreed to take over the club at the end of the season. Now, the Spurs job would have been much better, and so would the Palace job, obviously. But we can still build something with the Cherries next season. We've got 2 years to do it in, and plenty of Premier League clubs to beat in that time. Now, January was decent, really, but all of the league wins were repeat victories from earlier in the season. And thankfully, the FA Cup draw gave us Stoke in the 4th round, so we could tick them off with a comfortable victory. February was another nightmare, and this season was quickly running away from us. The decision to join Bournemouth looks to have affected the dressing room morale, and we'd slumped to 9th. But the FA Cup was still just about on the table. Now, a rare turn in form against Liverpool was very timely. We grabbed the win thanks to goals from Martins and McAtee, and we clung on to just about hold on to a 2-1 victory. Now, the FA Cup run continued, giving us Championship side Wolves in the semi-final. Now, this was a bit of a dream, as we hadn't beat them yet, and we needed basically another victory to get to the final of the FA Cup, and it would be my 200th game in my career. Now, Wembley saw an absolute cracker as we first came from behind, but then allowed Wolves to do the same to come back to 2-2, before we managed to bundle home a winner in the 87th minute. Now, not only was this another scalp taken from the list, but it gave us Chelsea in the final, and they were also still remaining unticked off on our Beat the 92 challenge. Now, the rest of the run-in was pretty much just enough to keep us in the top half, but defeat to Manchester United in a terrible way on the penultimate day meant that there would be no European qualification via the league. Final day gave us West Ham, and it was actually quite nice to see that Bournemouth was secure as well, so that didn't give us one last thing to stress about on the final day. And that final game was an absolute rout, as McAtee opened the scoring in the first half, and then the second half saw Lowe and Hayden score great efforts from range, before Morton made it 4 to close the Premier League season in style. But we had just one more game left with Ipswich, and we were heading back to Wembley for the FA Cup final. Now, I've had several chances against Chelsea recently. I think we played them in the Cup last year, but we failed spectacularly in most of them. And this was no real difference. Our tight defence kept us level all the way to the end of normal time, which wouldn't have been good enough anyway. And then Lukaku put us down in extra time with 2 goals, and we couldn't close out the Ipswich stint with a trophy. 25 teams to go, 6 seasons left to do it, and of those teams, there are 9 left in the Premier League, 1 in the National League, which is going to be really fun, and then 5 in each of the EFL leagues. Now, though, it's time to head off to the South Coast and join Bournemouth for the next chapter. It's Season 5 of Beat the 92, and we've only got 25 teams to go, but with the spread of teams across the leagues, this might start getting a little bit harder right now. So, I've joined Bournemouth after 2 seasons at Ipswich, and this is a side that narrowly avoided relegation last season, but I'm hoping for another top half run and to tick off some more teams from the Premier League. Now, our current best 11 looks like this as we approach June, but I'll be making plenty of changes before the season begins, despite having a pretty terrible looking balance sheet to work with. As we jump forward, and despite this, we've managed to spend £64 million over the summer transfer window and came out the other side with a bit of a different looking squad. So, the first signing was already in place before I was, and that was Fran Navarro from Porto, who joined for £26.5 million. Now, he looks potentially a little bit overpriced, but he had decent, if not spectacular, loan spell at the club last season, so at least he was a known quantity, unlike myself. Now, Nathan Ake came in and then on a free transfer after his Manchester City contract expired, with a 32-year-old rejoining the club that he'd left 7 years ago. Mads Roslev, there's then signed from Leicester for £35 million. Again, this is probably a little bit overpriced, but I can take full blame for this one. Now, he's a good right-back who can provide plenty of competition, and for places at least, in the defence. Now, another Man City defender came in on a free transfer as John Stones returned to England after 3 seasons in Saudi Arabia. This was another free transfer for our defence with some great experienced centre-backs joining the fold. Now, the goalkeeping situation at the club wasn't particularly great, and by mid-August I decided to bring in Jordan Pickford on loan from Spurs to become our new number 1. Well, number 30 at least. We began the season lining up with this 5-2-3 formation that I'd hoped would allow us to be really strong defensively, but it left a little bit to be desired, and I'm still on the fence about it in all honesty. And our first chance at the scalp came with Aston Villa on match day 3, but Villa are a really good side, and there was no upset here on this day. A late consolation goal from Traore was all we could muster, and it was not the best start to the season. Speaking of the start to the season, we made 2 more signings before the end of the transfer window, with Kelechi Iheanacho joining on a permanent deal from Leicester to give more competition up front for the strikers and the wingers, and Elhif Elmas returning on loan after his spell at Bournemouth last season. Now, long-term viewers of the channel will remember that he was an integral part of my Blackburn series back on FM22, elevating and then European Ewood. Now, the season started pretty poorly, including that Villa game. We got 7 games in with 5 draws and no wins, and 2 of those draws came in the EFL Cup. We advanced both time due to penalties, which obviously counts for nothing, whoever we were playing against. And we were down in 18th place, and so it was time to change up those tactics, and the 5-2-3 was scrapped with a more conventional, traditional 4-3-3 installed in its place. Let's see how we get on with these new tactics and this new formation going forward. Now, with that in mind, we hosted Arsenal in the EFL Cup towards the end of October. I think it might have even been on my birthday. And we managed to score the upset and tick them off our list thanks to a 3-1 victory. A corner gave us the lead with a bit of scrappy defending, allowing us to double the advantage, with Kluivert scoring on the break to make it 3. Arsenal's late consolation, nothing really mattering there. Southampton were our next victims, and a simple 1-0 victory was all that was needed here, and we were finally rolling with our season now. By the time we reached the Ipswich game in December, we'd not lost a game for nearly 3 months, and this run sent us up the league table like a rocket, where we sat in 10th place, with an outside shot at European football looking like a sensible target for the second half of the season. Ipswich provided little resistance, so they're not the side they were under me, with a long-range effort from Kluivert being the only goal of the game, 1 more down. We had Everton in back-to-back games later in the month, and we'd need both of them. The first meeting in the EFL Cup saw us getting knocked out, as Pickford conceded 3 first-half goals against his former club, and we never really looked like we were in the game at all. The league game 3 days later was a bit of a different story though, as we came from behind to win. Iheanacho peeled away at the back post for the equaliser, before tapping in the winner at the near post. Finally, another team ticked off. The final 3 games of the year were all against clubs that we still needed to beat, so it's going to be a tough run-in. Unfortunately, the first 2 were against the top 2 in the Premier League. Man City smashing us 4-1 in a comfortable outing for them at the Etihad, despite an early goal from Navarro. And we put up little resistance against league leaders Chelsea as they ran out with an easy 2-0 victory. We've faced Chelsea so many times in this career so far, and they have beat us every single one. Now, the final game of 2027 came against Nottingham Forest, and this was a different story, as Kluivert's early effort was enough to send us home at the end of the calendar year on a high. December saw a few missteps against those bigger clubs, but we still sat in 9th place at the turn of the year. We'd managed to knock off 5 more clubs from the chart, but there were only 3 left that we could still beat this season, so it was going to be a tricky second half of the campaign to navigate, and I might have to start plotting my next move in this challenge already. The first of those opportunities came away at Villa Park, but a sluggish performance left us trailing 2-0 with just 15 minutes remaining. An inspired fight back was on though, as Fran Navarro led a fast break and got his first goal back, and then a dangerous ball into the box from Kluivert found its way all the way through to Krupi for the equaliser, but we couldn't quite clinch the winner in the final 5 minutes. Our next game of interest came at home to Leeds, who we had the comfort of facing again shortly afterwards should we need it. But we didn't, as Traore and then Kluivert got goals in the second half, before a consolation from McIntyre late on was enough to give us the 2-1 victory. January was treacherous. That result against Leeds was welcome in every sense, as we were quickly losing touch with the European places and in danger of falling into mid-table obscurity. We were down to just 19 teams to go, but of the teams we were left to face this season, it was only Chelsea in the penultimate game that we could actually tick off. Out of both cups, and so far the league was leaving us with just that one team left. Therefore, I decided to spend most of my time in March job hunting, and ultimately the Leeds job came up, so I applied, despite the fact they were in the relegation zone. Leeds made the approach for the end of the season, and I accepted, the rationale being that they were rock bottom now, so that would open up some Championship clubs next season, and potentially a chance to strike off the final 3 Premier League sides before the end of the season after that. Now, a risky move though, as especially 5 days earlier, we smashed them again 2-1 for the second time in 6 weeks. But it was official, at the end of the season, I was off to Ellen Road. It would be my 4th club in 6 seasons, and would definitely not be my last. 5 points from the 5 games in April was less than ideal, and it set us up with a clash with league leaders Chelsea on the penultimate day. We would be without goalkeeper Pickford, who went down with injury during that poor run of form, and we sat 10th with 2 games to go and a very slim outside shot of Europe still on the table. That shot was looking great as we took a first half lead against Chelsea. Scott's ball into the box found Navarro, who turned on a sixpence and blasted home for the first goal of the game. But with 10 minutes left, a free kick and a dangerous place from Nkunku saw Chelsea show their skill as James peeled away unmarked at the back post and equalised. A win on the final day was enough to earn Bournemouth a place in the Europa Conference League for next season with 9th place, but I wouldn't be here to endure it, as I'd got 19 teams to go when I was off to Leeds, to see how many I could manage in as short a time as possible. Let's go. Leaving a Premier League team ahead of a European campaign to take over a recently relegated side is a bit of a strange career move, but we've got 19 clubs left to beat in Beat the 92. I've taken over Leeds United with the aim of ticking just 3 more clubs off our list this season and getting back into the Premier League next year. It was just a single season with Bournemouth, and I'm now at my 4th club in 6 seasons and find myself back in the Championship, and somehow we've got a negative bank balance, so this is going to be fun. Erik ten Hag stepped in as Bournemouth manager after getting sacked by Manchester United 18 months ago, but good luck in the Conference League. The fixtures were released and we had none of the clubs we needed to beat until December, but then they all came along at once, just like buses. As the season began, we were predicted 4th, but I'd made some killer signings, spending $91 million on new players before the transfer window had even ended, bringing in a profit along the way. With relegation, it was unsurprising to see a number of players jump ship, but we didn't even meet them, so it didn't really matter that much. Charlie Crew left for our old friends at Portman Road, Jack Harrison went to Wolves, Kyle Walker-Peters went to Everton, Jeremy Ngakia headed to Ewood Park to League One winners Blackburn, whilst Ethan Ampadu went to Germany and Hoffenheim. Lewis Brunt went to Fulham, Max Wober went to Middlesbrough, and Anthony Patterson to Aston Villa. It was basically a fire sale. However, in the opposite direction, Jan-Paul van Hecker joined for $17.5 million from Brighton. Great defender known for a hero spell on loan at Blackburn a few years ago. Tobias Gullickson also stepped down from Leicester for $14.5 million, a great attacking midfield asset. New gen Carlos Navarro was a huge summer target that we were close to signing, but unsurprisingly, he chose PSG over Leeds. But then he did take a loan move to make us feel better, and he's an incredible talent down the left-hand side of the pitch. But the marquee signing of the summer was Arda Güler. Out of favour at Real Madrid, the Turkish superstar was more than happy to come to Yorkshire for $40 million up front, with a potentially rising to $72 million with instalments and clauses. Next was Alex Kral, a veteran presence in the centre of midfield, and only cost us $16 million from Fenerbahce. Whilst Malo Gusto cost just $3 million for a permanent move from Chelsea for the right back. We needed a new goalkeeper and spent $5 million to bring Gavin Bazuna over from Southampton, whilst $19 million was also spent to bring Dominic Solanke up from Bournemouth to join his old manager. Now, he wasn't great for me in the Premier League, but he can definitely still do it in the Championship. Alfie Dorrington came in on loan from Spurs for more defensive cover, and we weren't done yet. On deadline day, I signed a Serbian wonder kid called Dusan Marinkovic from Red Star, Aurel Amenda on loan from Newcastle, and Adama Traore from Burnley. It was a ridiculous summer transfer window, $129 million spent in total on 17 players, with 29 players leaving the club. Welcome to the revamped Leeds United. We started the season winning 9 from 9 in all competitions and got handed a lovely draw in the EFL Cup at home to Premier League Luton Town, who we still needed to beat. We could get 4 teams this year now. Despite this start, Sunderland had matched us in the league, so we weren't exactly running away with things. We finally dropped points with a loss and a draw in the next 7 games, but we were still 2 points clear of Sunderland. Luton were no match for us in the Cup. Petkov, who you'll remember from previous episodes, scored the opening goal from the penalty spot. McIntyre, not a new signing, he's a youth player, grabbed the second to cap off a lovely move. Petkov got his second from a great free kick just outside the area, and Edouard rounded off a great day and a 4-0 victory. We were drawn against Manchester United in the next round, so that'll be fun. League form continued nicely over the next few weeks before we reached December on our next club of interest. Oh, and Liverpool offered me the manager's job, and I accepted. I was going to have to try and delay them as much as possible until we'd beaten the remaining Championship sides. How many times will they let me push the button? The first delay was definitely long enough to beat Birmingham, and we took the lead inside 5 minutes thanks to Gullickson. The Blues tried to make things interesting with an equaliser before half-time, but late second-half pressure gave us the victory. Arda Güler peeling away to find space to put us back ahead, and then he turned provider as he cut back from the touchline to find Sessegnon for the third and final goal. Sheffield United were up next and were a much tougher opposition, even taking the lead inside 20 minutes at Elland Road. But the second half was more of the same for our season so far. Arda from the penalty spot brought us level, and he did the deed a second time to give us the victory in less than spectacular fashion. Sometimes you do need luck on your side. Unfortunately, we were unable to get to the Barnsley game, but we still managed to beat 3 clubs as Leeds manager. Now it's time to go to Anfield and take over a struggling Liverpool side who sit 11th in the league table. Now Liverpool are only 4 points back from European places though, so a quick turnaround was definitely possible. Oh, look at that fixture list, it's incredibly kind. The 3 Premier League teams left to beat, Aston Villa, Chelsea and Man City, are all available before the end of the calendar year. I could be gone in 3 weeks. Now, Chelsea were up immediately in my first day, and it took a long battle to get a breakthrough, but finally it came in the 82nd minute. McAllister knocked back a cross and found Luis Diaz in loads of space, and he smashed home. Doak capitalised on some scruffy defending to get a second, and finally, after about 10 attempts, Chelsea were knocked off my list. Aston Villa provided another tough challenge, but 6 minutes in and we were ahead, with Gakpo cracking in a half volley after a poorly cleared corner. We doubled our lead before half-time, Gakpo involved again, this time throwing Doak through for a clean finish. Villa came back strong in the second half and pulled one back thanks to a Douglas Luiz penalty, and they were level in stoppage time after a corner that we couldn't clear. But the game was not done. Szoboszlai converted his own penalty in the 93rd minute, and it was 4-2 within another 60 seconds as Trent snuffed out an Aston Villa attack and led a charging counter, with Szoboszlai converting for his second in as many minutes. The trip to the Etihad ended the year, and we ended it in style. Liverpool players were lining up to take shots on the edge of the area, but it was Trent who did so and gave us the lead. Lewis pulled Man City level with a great long-range effort before half-time, but the deciding goal came shortly after the break, with Tchouaméni heading home from a corner to give us the 2-1 victory, and we knocked off all 3 Premier League clubs in less than 3 weeks. An unbeaten 6 games in charge at Anfield, and we were up to 6th place in the Premier League to close out to 2028. Now, there were just 13 clubs left on the Beat the 92 tracker, 1 in the Championship, 5 in League 1, 6 in League 2, and Crawley still toiling away in the National League. But after 19 days, it was goodbye to Liverpool, and I'm not entirely sure that I ever properly looked at the squad.
Sorry, what?
Literally a week later, and I'd found a new home. Leyton Orient of League 1 came calling, and I said yes for some reason. Leeds, Liverpool, and Leyton Orient all in a single season. It was complete madness. But they were somehow sitting in the playoff places, and they'd been on a bit of a shaky run throughout December, so maybe the wheels were about to fall off. I got 3 home games to try and get things right before we travelled to Wigan for the first big game back in League 1. But that game got rearranged and we went unbeaten in January, winning 4 from 5 and moving up to 4th in the process. The squad needed lots of work, but it was very young and seemed to be doing okay, so only 1 transfer was made during the window, as new-gen youngster Jonah Michael came in on loan from Manchester United. We finally faced Wigan and needed every second of the game, with a breakthrough coming in stoppage time thanks to an Archibald free kick, and we kept on rolling through the 92. The game against Bristol Rovers was less nervy as we went ahead early thanks to a penalty, and then came on very strong in the second half. New loanee Michael combined with Hawkins on the edge of the area to double the advantage, and then youngster Mullin found himself in loads of space in the area and drilled home a 3rd goal. A late consolation was nothing to worry about, and we left 3-1 winners. More victories followed, and we got 11 games unbeaten since joining, which left us 3rd and well in the fight for automatic promotion, whether we want it or we don't. And we've got Notts County and Lincoln back to back, and they are the last 2 clubs that we can beat this season. Notts County were a relatively easy opposition as they struggled against relegation. A nice ball over the top allowed Hawkins to break through, and he cut inside to smash home a goal number 1. He was subbed not long after, and his replacement Archibald picked up where he left off, and we were 2-0 winners. Now, the Lincoln game was suspended, and after our biggest victory this season, at any club potentially, with 7-2 over Grimsby, we finally lost the game at home to Bolton after 14 games unbeaten, plus the 6 or however many it was at Liverpool, and dozens at Leeds. This has been a great season, but still 3rd place, playoff secured, and promotion on the table still. When we finally faced Lincoln, we were struggling to clear our lines early and allowed the home side to go ahead with a cracking long-range effort. But we fought back in the second half, with White heading home at the back post from Mullin's free kick, and then we doubled our lead with Hawkins putting Wallace through behind the defence and his first time volley being a lovely way to cap off the victory and the season. Fantastic season that left us with just 9 teams left to beat, and we've been all over the divisions, and we were down to single digits with 4 more seasons left to go. We had 2 games left of the season against promotion rivals and sat in 2nd place in the league. Now, honestly, promotion would be a bit of a bad thing as I'd have to leave Leyton Orient, with Barnsley being the only Championship team left to beat, and they've already been relegated. We could also see 3 more teams from League 2 getting promoted, meaning there would be 5 out of 9 in League 1, so I really ought to do my best to try and stay put. A loss to QPR and a draw at home to Coventry confirmed their promotion and our route into the playoffs. We missed out by a single point, and honestly, we could have done it if we tried a little harder. Charlton were an absolute pushover in the playoff semi-finals, and despite my best efforts, we smashed them 7-3 on aggregate. And in the final at Wembley, Stoke were being stubborn as well about beating us and needed extra time to get the job done. I refused to pull my keeper, but we did eventually concede 2 goals, and we would stay in League 1. Now, after all promotions and relegations were through, there were 0 teams in the top 2 flights, 4 in League 1, 3 in League 2, and now, annoyingly, 2 teams sitting in the National League.
I'll start next season at Leyton Orient, but there's a very good chance that I'll be dropping down a level or two by Christmas.
Just 9 teams to go until we beat the 92, and I've stayed at Leyton Orient to kick off season number 7. We deliberately missed out on promotion via the playoffs last season in order to take out 4 more clubs in League 1, even though the season preview has us down in 10th place. Now, the EFL Cup gave us a nice draw early on in Cheltenham, which meant we had 2 chances to beat them in the first month of the season. A few transfers were needed to improve the squad though, and first up was Kieran McGuckin, formerly of Glen Torren, to provide much needed strength to our midfield. The level of strength was then blown out of the water completely as Tahith Chong joined, formerly of pretty much everywhere. I tried to sign him in the Championship with Ipswich 3 or 4 years ago, who knows at this point, but he came in now as our best player at Brisbane Road. Now, young left-back Jaden Meghoma also came in on a free transfer because I refused to spend money on players in League 1, and he was going to provide some great depth in the defence. Now, we finally sorted out our goalkeeping situation as well, getting Daniel Grimshaw in from Blackpool. Now, despite coming from the National League side, he is a massive improvement over everyone else at the club. We'd got someone to stop the goals, and now we needed someone to score them as well. So Luca Fletcher came in on loan from Fulham. Now, this new gen looks like he had a decent loan spell at Exeter last season, but looking at his attributes, he's improved a lot since then. The 4-2-3-1 remained in place and we were ready to kick off the season. But before we could get to Cheltenham, we signed a veteran centre-back in Jake Cooper, whose experience of over 500 games at Millwall would be much needed for our young squad. Cheltenham took the lead in the EFL Cup tie thanks to former Blackburn youngster Edmondson, but we were quick to turn things back around. Meghoma put a deep ball into the box from the left flank, with Hawkins getting there first and nogging it into the path of Gilsenan to score the equaliser just after half-time. Chong then showed his class as he tore through the midfield and scored an audacious outside of the boot effort from range to give us the lead. Now, with Archibald coming off the bench and finding himself in tons of space, he put the game beyond all doubt with a 3-1 away victory. Not long later, Grimshaw was taken out of action with an ankle injury in training and would miss a month of games. We'd have to play an out-of-contract Suarez, who held things down last season, but he could leave at any point. This meant that the season started well, if a little rocky, but there were lots of goals, and former club Ipswich took us out of the EFL Cup and took all our dreams away in the next round. So we sat third, a nice place early on, and would be promotion challengers with a full-strength side. On deadline day, Southampton came in with a big money offer for Scott Mullin, signing him for £3.7 million, but then sent him back on loan to us anyway for the rest of the season. I'd made a move already before that with it to sign a replacement, with Oscar Kelly coming in on loan from Stoke, so we got lots of options on the left wing now. Grimshaw returned from injury and in his first game back fractured his wrist, so the goalkeeping crisis was not over, and as such we didn't win a game during October, drawing against 3 relegation candidates, which was not a good look. Thankfully we kept the pace and still sat second just behind Exeter, but it was getting a bit crowded at the top. Morecambe were up next, and thankfully Grimshaw was back and in goal. Within 6 minutes, McGuckin threaded the needle to put Mullin through to open the scoring, and then Mullin turned provider 6 minutes later, allowing Chong to smash home goal number 2. Chong and Mullin then worked together for goal number 3, putting Fletcher in, and we were comfortable winners. With a late penalty from Morecambe, nothing of any concern for anyone, and we were now top of the league. With the squad back to full fitness, we went on an absolute tear, only dropping points in a draw against QPR over the next 8 games. We were out of the remaining cup competitions, but with fixture rearrangements, we had the final 2 clubs back-to-back in mid-December. We had gapped the chasing pack though, and were 7 points clear, but it wouldn't matter soon, all being well. Burton Albion were really tough to break down, but we did manage to, eventually, with Mullin leading the charge on a counter-attack, and his threaded through ball allowed Fletcher to slot home the only goal of the game. Recently relegated Barnsley were up next. A second-half free kick from Chong was drifted into the back post, but the defence couldn't clear the ball away, and this left Mullin and Bailey to pass around the edge of the area before the latter curled in the opening goal. But with 3 minutes left, Barnsley fought their way back into the game. A lofted cross was headed home at the back post, but thankfully a last-gasp break in the 93rd minute was key to our victory, with Hawkins putting a hopeful ball into the box, and he went all the way through to Sang, who slotted home, and we had won. Leyton Orient were now 9 points clear, but with Charlton having a game in hand. More importantly, we were down to just 5 teams left in Beat the 92, 3 in League 2 and 2 in the National League. A quick look at the job centre shows 4 options in League 2, but nothing in the National League just yet. 3 relegation struggling sides and mid-table Rochdale, who might be our next home. Regardless of where I go next, I'm unfortunately having to leave another dominant side in December. Goodbye, Leyton Orient. It was just one game shy of 50 at Brisbane Road, which came around very quickly, but with no teams left to beat, it seemed pretty pointless to hang around to get promoted into another league, where there were also no teams left to beat. 9 days later, I was unveiled as the new Rochdale manager. The timing wasn't great though, as their last 2 games were against Fleetwood and Wickham, who they beat, but they were still on our tracker, so I can't take credit for those victories. We'll have to wait until the end of the season to take on them too, and take their scalps, but we do have a clash with Gillingham before the end of the year. I take over in 8th place, just outside the playoffs thanks to goal difference, but with a couple of games to play before that clash with Gillingham. A mixed first 2 games saw goals galore against struggling Woking, and then defeat to promotion rivals Walsall. We remained in 8th with Gillingham just behind, and a win against them could create some good separation. Some lovely fluid passing in the second half led to our first goal of the game, with Kamara putting the finishing touch on the move. A counter-attack with 5 minutes to go sealed the fate of the game, with Captain Neil putting McGill through to make it 2-0 and lock in another victory. Just 4 teams left to go, but January came and went because the financial situation was particularly dire. Nearly $1 million in the red and overspending already on our wage budget, so there were no transfers made and no loan moves completed either. On the pitch, things were going incredibly well. 5 victories and a draw is fine form, which has seen us rise up to 3rd place in the league. Salford are miles clear, but we are now looking really good shout for promotion. The next 2 months were largely good as well. We absolutely smashed Salford 4-0, but then dropped points in the subsequent 3 games. March saw us secure at least a playoff place, and we continue to be right in the thick of an automatic promotion battle against Walsall and Fleetwood, who we would finally get a chance to defeat in the next game. Things started very well as Kamara beat the defence with a perfectly timed run, which allowed him to square the ball for Brown to nod home for the opener. Fleetwood caught us in the second half with a similarly worked goal, with the ball into the box being our undoing. But a well-worked move 10 minutes later saw Brown return the favour to Kamara, which he gladly put away, and we would leave deserved winners. And on the final day of the season, we faced Wickham, and we took the lead thanks to a wild deflection from Diallo's long-range hit and hope effort, and the ball looped hopelessly over the Wickham keeper. We doubled our advantage late in the second half, with Myers winning a back post header and McGill smashing in the knockdown. 2-0 winners, and we had just 2 teams left on the list. It was a great effort in the second half of the season to see Rochdale automatically promoted. In typical bizarre fashion, a challenge to beat all 92 English League clubs is going to have to end with me managing in the National League. That doesn't make any sense. The current options are either Harrogate and Eastbourne. Both sides struggled this season, but we'll see what happens when I resign from Rochdale. Let's beat all the 92 by going to the National League. After 7 seasons, I've managed to beat 90 of the 92 English League clubs. The final 2 teams left on my list are Blackpool and Crawley, who both currently play in the Vanarama National League. So, in order to beat the 92, I need to go outside of the 92, and I really should have thought about this to begin with. With that in mind, I resigned from a position as Rochdale manager and was on the lookout for a new non-league home. I had a small scare a week later, but thankfully Blackpool lost in the playoff final, and if they'd been promoted, that could have gotten a little bit awkward. As it stands, both Blackpool and Crawley remained in the National League, and I'd have to join them. I was off to Harrogate, a side that had just about remained in the National League, finishing 19th in the season that's just finished, but they were the best offer on the table, and I wanted to get my new home sorted early in order to put together a squad that could win against these last 2 teams. Now, it's crazy to think that I was in the Premier League with Liverpool just 18 months ago, but this has been a roller coaster ride. There was 0 money to spend, and I spent all of it, with all 4 transfers coming in as a free transfer and a loan move being all that we could manage before the season began. First up was Lewis O'Neill, the Scottish midfielder who spent a season at Dumbarton after failing to get anywhere in the Preston youth system. He should be at his level in the National League though, and could play a key role in our squad. Left winger Wang Dongliang joined on loan from Huddersfield, and he was the only player that they would send, making clear use of their affiliate relationship. We don't really have anyone else who can play on the left, so he will feature for most of the year. Andrew Hilliard joined from divisional rivals Tranmere as our new starting left-back, and that whole side of the pitch was a weakness when I joined, and hopefully we've fixed it now. Nathan Culver was our new leading striker. The 22-year-old managed 7 appearances for Wolves during his time in their system, but he looks to be a 20-goal-a-season kind of player in the National League. I then signed a player who was on loan at Harrogate last season and came to the end of his contract. It was Matthew Bowles who joined, mainly for his versatility as he could play all down the right side of the pitch, and was more than competent at left-back as well. He started the season with a tiny squad, just 19 players in the first team, and we had 1 star player, 15 bang average, and 3 there just to make up the numbers. This could be a tough season. Due to these limited numbers, I opted to take the tactical approach of playing people wherever they could fit, so I ended up with this very strange asymmetric 4-5-1, but let's see if we can do anything in the National League, and importantly, we need to take those 2 key victories. After all these moves, the season preview had us right in the middle of the pack in 12th, ahead of Crawley, but Blackpool would be a tough opposition as they were right amongst the title favourites. I'd have to get time to get my feet under the table though, as it would be mid-October before the important games came, and like buses, they were back to back. If all goes well, I could complete the challenge on my 41st birthday. Unlike a side who would be mid-table, we beat the teams worse than us and lost to the teams better than us, and we typically sat 11th after August was all said and done. We managed to squeeze some more wage budget from the coffers though, and made a couple of signings to further fill out the squad. Hayden Parisi joined us from Notts County to provide some much needed quality in the final third. He would slot in at attacking mid behind Culver. George Abbott came in to provide more bodies in the midfield as well. He was once at Spurs but had played for about as many clubs as I'd managed in recent years, most recently at Woking. And finally, Sam Proctor joined from York to provide a second pair of capable hands in goal. I can imagine that he'll be providing plenty of competition to Thomas as the season wears on. After a few draws, we found some good form in mid-September and went on a winning run, going 2 months without defeat as well. This run moved us up to 3rd place in the table and left us in a great position as we faced league leaders Blackpool in the next most important game of the year. It was a one-sided affair, but despite their chances, Blackpool couldn't find the back of the net. In the 92nd minute, however, we did. A ball into the back post was headed goal-bound by Lutz. It beat the keeper but cracked the bottom of the post. Thankfully, the rebound landed on Calver's left boot and we'd stolen the victory. We went straight into the Crawley game with a whole challenge on the line. Inside just 5 minutes, we were ahead and cruising. Parisi squared the ball to Lutz, who found himself in bags of space, and he took full advantage and smacked in a long-range effort that beat the keeper. 10 minutes later, a corner scramble ended with Wang Dongling scoring from the edge of the area, and I put my feet up. However, a mad 5 minutes to start the second half saw Crawley fight back. We couldn't clear away a corner, and they managed to get their first goal. A counter-attack saw more opportunities to get rid of the danger that we missed, and it was 2-2, and then a penalty sunk us and we'd lost the easier game 3-2. It was really a birthday to forget, and I'd had to wait until March before we get another shot at completing the challenge. This defeat took the wind out of our sails and we managed just 1 league victory over the next 6 weeks, and as such we fell down to 6th place. We kept rolling in both cup competitions though, and December saw a windfall as we finally sold a player. We sold second choice striker Connor Carty to Waterford in his native island for what would eventually become £205,000. A sale that finally got us out of the red and into a positive bank balance for the first time in months. An easier run of games in December saw form turn around, and some key victories against struggling sides kept us 5th and well in the hunt for the playoffs. We lost in the FA Cup to Sheffield Wednesday, but league form continued to be good. But as we neared the Crawley game, we had a wobble, with defeat to Blackpool and a draw away at Yeovil being the wrong kind of preparation for the big game. We remained 5th and were the much better side on paper, as Crawley sat down in 11th and didn't look to be making any upward motion towards the final part of the season. We started in similar fashion to the last meeting between the two sides. Inside 10 minutes, Jenkins Davis sent a square ball into the box, which Calver put away to give us the lead. But we didn't get too carried away and controlled the game from there before Parisi found himself some space in the box with just 10 minutes left to place the second goal past the goalkeeper, and we had done it. The tracker is complete. All 92 clubs had been beaten, and it had taken less than 8 seasons. Get in! The season ran out quite nicely from there. We closed out the season with 9 games unbeaten and made it to the semi-finals of the FA Trophy, only to lose out on penalties. We ended the season 4th and entered the first round of the promotion playoffs. We eased past St Stevenage and York before getting to Northampton in the final at Wembley. They'd knocked out Oldham, who were clearly the second best side in the league behind Blackpool, and had finished the season quite poorly. I think we beat them 4-0. In front of nearly 40,000 fans at Wembley, we cruised to a comfortable victory. Parisi broke the line and smashed home the opener before half-time, and then found himself in tons of space in the Northampton area just after the break, and we won 2-0. A perfect way to end the challenge. I'd beaten all 92 English League clubs, had to drop all the way down to the National League to finish things off, and then get on Harrogate back into the 92 after they'd fallen out at the beginning of the challenge. There are 92 clubs in English League football, and I've beaten them all.